All right, so just on time. Thank you everyone for joining us in for another session. We're going to have a wonderful time together. And I'm just going to quickly introduce our speaker today. I think she's not a stranger. Most of us must know her. So our speaker is originally from Iran, Dr. Sara Afshari. She is a research tutor here at OCMS. She received a PhD from Edinburgh University in Media, Religion and Culture. She's a co-founder and former executive director for SAT7 PARS or CAT7PARS, a Christian television channel, Farsi Persian language. She has an MTH in World Christianity, also from Edinburgh, and an MA in Media Communication from Wales University. Her recent book is titled Religion, Media, and Conversion in Iran, Mediated Christianity in an Islamic Context. I think this is a very interesting book. Somebody should volunteer to even actually review it if it's not reviewed yet. And so Dr. Sara will speak to us today on a topic that is titled Understanding Contextualization of Religious Conversion through the Study of the Deconversion Process of Converts. I'm going to read that again. Understanding Contextualization of Religious Conversion through the Study of the Deconversion Process of Converts. So she will explore the deconversion process of converts from a Muslim background in her lecture. And then the conversion or leaving one's religion provides insights into the challenges and obstacles faced by converts before, during, and after their conversion to Christianity. So let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Sara.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and attending this lecture. Just before, I need to remind you about the next lecture. Next week lecture will be on digital theology. If any of you are interested on digital theology, please do come. Dr. Younes Kalberg will give us this lecture. And on the 15th also will be on AI and vision. Please do come. These 2 weeks there will be on digital theology, technology, and faith. Now, my talk is about, as mentioned, is about the conversion process. As a Christian convert myself for over 30 years, I still consider myself a convert. And perhaps I have been Christian more than many of you, but still I see myself as a convert. What is this? What does this mean and what does this signify? It means that my past religious and philosophical ideologies continue to influence me, and I am engaging in an ongoing dialogue between my former self and my current faith identity. When will I stop being a convert? I think never. Conversion is not a singular or a finished event. Rather, it is a journey that stretches across time, often without a very clear end point. This is why even after 3 decades, I still regard myself as a convert, while someone born in Christianity or in Christian culture or into secularism, when they become Christian, even they don't call themselves sometimes convert, they call themselves born again. But why is this? I would argue that all this is very much linked to the deconversion process. What makes the deconversion, the process deconversion meaning simply the process of moving away from your past religion, past faith, what makes the deconversion so enduring that it shapes the faith and life journey of a convert, and the converts will continue being a convert. Conversion, and by extension, deconversion, is a complex and controversial concept. There is no universal or no agreed definition for the word conversion. Historically, conversion was used to describe conversion coming from a Latin roots, and it used to be described the way an artist transforms raw materials into a finished piece of art. And later on, Christianity took that word to signify how a person is remade through faith and by God. The conversion, meanwhile, carries the prefix D, which is in Oxford Dictionary, it says and suggests that this D connotes withdrawal or deprivation. In this context, the conversion refers significantly to the loss of faith and self. Although there are various forms of the conversion, this discussion my talk only focuses on conscious rejection of faith, distinct from secularism, which involves a passive fading away, fading of belief. The key in here between deconversion with intention, it is the intention, the difference lays in the intention. In deconversion, faith is not dismissed or named as irrelevant, but as a mistake or as a flawed. So conversion, when we analyze or should we analyze the conversion process from conversion process? I would say no, because the conversion process and conversion process, they are the two sides of the same coin. However, the conversion process has much longer history than the conversion process. One is much longer and the other one is much shorter. But however, when it comes to scholars and even converts, especially scholars, normally they wanted to look at the conversion process through the lens of conversion, not by its own right. And another thing is the scholars, especially Christian scholars, when they wanted to look at the conversion, they normally says moving from a sinful past and to embracing the righteous. But in reality, as a convert myself, I wouldn't consider myself as having a sinful past. I mean, not as sinful as I am now in that regard. And therefore, that meaning we undermine the conversion stories as just because they are negative, and we just wanted to say, oh, that is a sinful past. And that is the problem also, especially within the evangelical, the telling of the converse stories. Converse, they use the same thing, tries to emphasize how awful they were and what they become in the Christian faith. I can tell you that my life before my conversion to Christianity was much more interesting than it is now. Sorry. And therefore, one of these scholars who talks about, actually criticizes this view, not talking about sinful towards righteousness. He says, converse normally moves from a sinful past, not necessarily embracing righteousness. But again, even James William is not really to the point here, because some of us converts, we do not have coming from a sinful past to, let's say, to a righteous life in that sense. And therefore, this argument also is not really valid. In this discussion, I argue that the conversion significantly shapes how converts intellectually and emotionally engage with their new faith, depending on the depth of their previous religious identity. It may take years or even lifetime for converts to fully reconcile to their new belief system. For example, St. Augustine admitted in his book Confession that it took him 10 years to eventually manage to get rid of the Manichaeism ideologies. But for St. Augustine, 10 years, for me, still, after 30 years, it still is ongoing. But in reality, I don't want to let it go. then through this, I will show you why I don't want to let it go, because of the conversation, back and forth conversation, and in the journey of becoming, converse is in the journey of becoming, and that can help that journey. We will talk about it later. It is essential, therefore, to study the conversion into two critical phases of converse journey. The first critical phase is during the conversion and in early days of conversion. During conversion and early days of conversion, converts and even scholars normally look at the deconversion through the lens of conversion. And the second phase is after, when the Christians become mature, and therefore in that time, the interpretation of the new faith uses the old faith as a referencing point. And so we will look at in these two contexts in that way. So now, there are many theories have been developed and abandoned, especially during the second half of 20th century. And again, because of the practice of conversion, the scholars start writing about conversion in the 21st century, and we see more and more books coming out on conversion stories, especially conversions from Islam to Christianity. My talk is also very much linked to the conversion of Muslims to Christianity. In this, my talk, I will normally look at very briefly in the first section of my talk about view. I'm sorry, I am not using my PowerPoint. No. This will be the layout of my talk. The first section, I will look at the influence of religious conversion during conversion process. And in that, I will only look at the deconversion experience, whether the conversion experience mirror the conversion theories in reverse, and the absence of attraction, or the push and pull factors, and also the rule of agency. This talk also aims to shed a light on the stages, as I mentioned, of the conversion, because we think, I'm going to tell you the implication a little bit now, and if I don't have time at the end, at least we will have a little bit the reasons why this is important. The conversion process can be understood. If we want to understand converts, we need to understand their story of the conversion, because it contributes to the development of contextual theology, missiology, and ecclesiology, especially those churches who have lots of converts among them, like, let's say, Iranian churches, or those churches who are working among the converts. When properly guided, the conversion experiences can provide invaluable insights for us. These insights can also shape discipleship programs, mentorship initiatives, and the training of the converts. Understanding that the conversion stories equips the church to support converts more effectively, ensuring that faith development is nurtured not only by, but also with converts, rooted in their unique context and experiences. So now, let's going to this is also still part of what I'm going to do later. And let's now going to, I'm really sorry. I have not been using my PowerPoint really well. I will start doing it now. So now the conversion experience do the conversion experience mirror conversion theories in reverse? In this, I am going to look at only three aspects of that. One is the conversion process is not really linear. Most of the time, the theories indicate a linearity in the conversion process. And the same way, the converts also talk about, when they tell us the story, they try to tell us the story in a linearity way. I was in a bad place. I heard the gospel, or someone told me about the gospel, or I have a dream, or Christ answered my faith, and I accepted Christ, and Christ saved me. It's a very linear procedure, even if they go back and forth, different stages, but still in a very linear procedures. However, when it comes to the deconversion is not that tidy. In that sense, the process of disillusionment, the process of questioning, the process of distancing from religious beliefs and your community, they are all in a non-linear fashion. And this another one is the different motivations. Motivations, for example, when we look at not only the stories of the converts, but also the theories which developed, conversion theory that developed. Normally, talking about conversion often stems from seeking belonging, meaning, or identity. But the conversion mainly arise from negative experiences within religious, intellectual doubts, or changes of personal values. When people are growing up, of course, their views also changes. The third one is unique challenges. Deconversion has its own unique challenges. We cannot have only the lens of conversion looking at the challenges of deconversion, but we have to look at deconversion as its own right, because it has its own unique challenges, like a social stigma, loss of community, loss of self. For example, I remember one of the converts was telling me when I interviewed him, it says when he felt Islam betrayed him, he decided to leave Islam behind, but he misses God. He used to drive long way into the desert, and there he used to cry and scream and shout at God, "Why did you forsake me? I loved you. Why did you forsake me?" And that kind of pain and loss, you cannot really zoom on it through conversion story. It has to be used and the second factor here, we are going to the lens we are looking at, is the lens of push factors, pull and push factors. Most of, again, theories talks about pull factors in relation to the Christianity being, having grace and love of God and all that kind of things. But for the conversion, we need to talk about the push factors. It is not about the absence of attraction. The conversion is not about the absence of attractions, but it is active repulsion. It is about active engaging to move away. Conversion stories, theories highlight, as I mentioned, the pull factors and very much individual decision and based on the individuals. The conversion stories is the same. It's very much individually driven, culture and agenda and everything. But again, that has a different aspects, because in conversion, the pull factor include the promise of belonging, include meaning making and decision making narratives, include charismatic leadership or fulfillment of spiritual needs. However, the conversion often stems from negative experience or realization that individual faces in their own faith. Examining these push factors reveals a more nuanced understanding of religious change than simply the absence of attraction. Sometimes we present it in this way to people. The other one is some of those push factors are disillusionment. Most of this, again, I have to emphasize that most of those push factors, as you must see them, are actually is developed within the faith itself. For example, disillusionment with religious leaders and leadership, because a faith always talks about faithful leaders and all these things. When the leaders do not do well, they create disillusionment. For a person to move away from from that faith, they need to destroy that illusionment so they can move. Destroying that illusionment, again, is a painful procedure. And therefore, the conversion can stem from hypocrisy, absence of power, or disillusionment with religious institution. This highlights a breach of trust and ethical violations, actively pushing individuals away rather than simply lacking attractive qualities in their former faith. However, again, when the converts become Christian, they still struggle to gain that trust, even in their new faith. And this, for example, many of us converts, and even myself included, and still sometimes I don't belong to many Christian groups. I still do feel I don't fit in the church. I don't fit in that congregation. And still we are struggling with that understanding of trust and also understanding of ethical violations. Quickly we point out, oh, that is discrimination. That is because we become more observer in that kind of situations. The other one is, again, part of the push factor is intellectual doubt and cognitive dissonance. Conversion narratives often focus on finding intellectual and emotional satisfactions in religious doctrines, but pushing factors talks about dissatisfaction and also talks about intellectual struggles which goes through. The other one, again, part of the push factor is negative social experience. And most of the, again, theories and even converts, if they need to tell the stories to the people, they need to adjust their stories. They focus on the negative social experience of the family, of the society, of the religion towards them, and all these things. However, most of the times, what is missing there is, in fact, the deep struggle, the inner struggle of the converts during this conversion process is missing from those studies and from those narrative stories. The other one is a change in personal values and identity. Of course, many of us grows, and as we grow, our views changes of religions, and we wanted to find, and our values changes. So we don't feel satisfied with what we have. We wanted to seek and experiment with different religious ideologies. Understanding these push factors provides a more compelling picture of religious change and highlights the limitations of solely focusing on attractive forces in explaining religious affiliation. That is why sometimes we do mainly focus on attractive forces. The third is the rule of agency in conversion and in deconversion. The rule of agency, again, the theories we have does not explain fully what is the rule of agency in the deconversion story. It does brings it in and it does talks it, but again, through the lens of conversion rather than through the lens of the conversion. And let me just bring a few of those lenses. For example, overemphasizing on the social and the structural factors, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we miss those inner struggles for making decisions among the converts. Those models who focus on, like, for example, Stark and Lufland and Stark emphasizes in that kind of models, this model may not fully capture the internal struggles, critical reflection, and independent decision-making involved in religious change. After 30 years, and still, sometimes I go to bed with that kind of views, and especially when you come back from Lausanne 4. Limited focus on negative agency. Most of the times when it comes to conversion story, often focuses on agent pursuing belonging, meaning, identity, purpose. However, they do not adequately addresses the agency exercise in rejecting a belief system, often at a social or personal cost. I have lots of stories to tell you, rejecting what it cost them, yet we do not go deeper into their cost. We quickly hold into the conversion to the Christianity, says hallelujah, amen. The other one is the complexity of the context. Though, to be fair, most of the scholars, they talk about the context and the influence of the context, but most of the times we forget about, okay, of course, both scholars also identify the fact that conversion is very much personal choice. And yet they do not fully capture how social, cultural, and historical context can both enable and constrain agency in religious choice. And especially nowadays that religious choice or change has become very much norm and people moving from one to another religion. This is very important to understand this complexity of context. And now, the next one, I am more excited actually in the next one. The second part is the influence of conversion after the conversion, meaning when these converts are matured, how that, because before we start saying, normally the conversion, converts, scholars use the lens of conversion to look at the deconversion stories. But here, though sadly hasn't much written about it, and when listening to the converts, I will share with you what two focus groups discussions later soon. And we noticed that majority of the times, in fact, the converts use their previous religion as referencing point to interpret the Bible and to interpret the faith. Now, this here, I like to talk about, tell you about this focus group. The focus group I'm talking about here is a focus group. I did it a few years ago for my PhD, but for different reasons. Yet at the heart of my focus group was the conversion process. But because my thesis was not really involved in the conversion, so I always wanted to do something about it. And then here I'm going to just share some of that with you. The focus group, the two focus group was one from Anglican Church, the other one from a Pentecostal church. And I asked them to watch two programs. One was Pentecostal evangelical worship, very much linked to televangelical, American televangelical and pop culture. And the other one was prayer and Christianity, very conservative, and has some connections and similarity and familiarity with Islam and Islamic cultures. And interestingly, both groups, despite their denomination, they react to that the focus groups very similar. And that is why I'm not going to separate them, because there was not really much separation. For converse, denomination means really not much. Both programs evoked strong emotional responses, but for different reasons. The first program was criticized for its perceived lack of respect for faith, for both faith and God, as well as audience, because the content was shallow. While the second, despite its focus on prayer and Christianity, theologically become more problematic due to the use of term Hazrat for Mary, and only once the speaker referred to Mary as Mother of God. This phrase triggered deep emotional reactions in the participants, as it reminded them of their Islamic past, the theological struggle they faced in accepting new Christian faith. It's not only about their past, also the struggle that they went through to accept the Christian theologies. The difficulty in accepting Mary as the Mother of God led to discussion that revealed participants' inner turmoil regarding their deconversion from Islam and the conversion to Christianity. Both deconversion and conversion created a trauma for some of those converts. For example, one participant remarked, accepting Jesus as God was difficult, let alone now accepting Mary as the Mother of God. And another convert says, when we talk to other Muslims, they normally point to the weakest point in Christianity, the Trinity. The Trinity is the strongest, yet for them felt it is the weakest point. Therefore, all this illustrates how these theological concepts clash with their former religious worldviews. Another participant expressed that even hearing such phrase felt like blasphemy. This highlighted the tension between Christian and Islamic theology, interpretations, particularly Christian theological interpretations, particularly regarding the nature of God and the idea of monotheism, Tawhid versus Trinity. The participants' rejection of the title Hazrat literally meaning, it is similar to says, Your Eminence or Your Highness. Your Highness meaning Ali Hazrat, Your Eminence meaning Hazrat. Yet they didn't want that to be used for Mary. Hazrat for Mary was not merely about theological correctness, but was tied to their personal, historical, and emotional baggage they carried from their Islamic upbringing. Despite Hazrat being a term respected commonly, and even you can use it for a person alive, commonly used in Islamic culture, most participants objected to its use in this concept and in this context. One participant, Bahare, insisted that Mary is not Hazrat. Mary is an ordinary woman like me, arguing that Mary should be seen as an ordinary woman. This rejection of Islamic terminology represented a broader struggle with their former religious identity, and also reflecting the ongoing psychological and emotional struggle to fully embrace their new faith. However, not only participants share the same viewpoint, some acknowledge the cultural significance of the word Hazrat, recognize it as a term of respect and purity. For example, Venus pointed out that using respectful titles as Hazrat Maryam or Maryam Muqaddas, Saint Mary, was culturally important because in Iran, especially in older days, we wouldn't call someone by their name, and especially if someone has a rank or it is older, you don't call it by the name. But however, Bahare, the other lady who insisted she is ordinary like me, Bahare start arguing that it is not about Hazrat. It is what Hazrat indicates of. It's not about calling her Hazrat, but it is what reminds her of all these things. This divergence of opinions revealed a deeper issue. The participants' experience of deconversion and conversion were highly individual, shaped by their unique cultural, religious, and personal histories. The discussion gradually shifted from theology to psychology and sociology, as participants explored how their past religious experiences continue to influence their present faith journey. For example, one participant, Amin, joked that the use of Hazrat made him want to say salawat. Salawat means a praise to God and to the Prophet Muhammad, demonstrating how deeply ingrained Islamic practices and language remain in their subconscious. I told you, these converts been converted to Christianity between 1 and 20 years. They were not really new converts. The emotional impact of their deconversion process from Islam become evident when participants share personal stories and betrayal and loss. One participant described their deconversion as a failed love, expressing failings of betrayal by their former faith and a desire to distance themselves from everything that reminded themselves of. And even he was saying, even a car you used to drive, you don't want to drive it. Even the restaurants you used to go, you don't want to go there because that reminds you of that failed love. This metaphor of failed love or divorce or separation from Islam captured the pain and confusion they felt as they navigated their new Christian identity. Amir, one of the participants, articulated a key insight when he spoke of involuntary comparison, because one of the participants says, the Bible is enough for us, we shouldn't go to that kind of things. Amir says, no, it is not, because we don't compare voluntarily. It's involuntary comparison comes in between their old faith and their new. He emphasized that many converts, as I mentioned, though several years in journey, were still in early stage of their conversion and had not yet fully developed theological understanding needed to cope with these comparisons. His statement underscored the need for a new theological language. His statement, one that puts neither influenced by Islamic terminology nor borrowed from Western Christian traditions. Instead, this new language needed to emerge from the converts' own stories and deconversion, pain, loss, and eventual reconciliation with their past. At the end of the focus group, they start talking about we need time to heal. The focus group discussion ended with a plea for acknowledgement of pain and loss that Iranian converts experienced as they transitioned from Islam to Christianity. This process was not just about adopting a new set of beliefs, but involved coming to terms with emotional and psychological aftermath of leaving their previous faith. Participants called for a more cultural sensitivity approaching to Christian theology. They were saying, even if it is biblically correct, but you need to be sensitive to what we went through. This request for time for healing and for the development of new theological language was a recurring theme throughout this discussion. One of the most striking aspects of the conversion was that realization that the language used in both programs, it was in Farsi, yet they felt alienated. They felt the language was alien to them. And the language failed to resonate with who they are and who they were becoming. Despite the program were perceived as culturally alien, either too Americanized or too familiar to their past Islamic culture. This gap between program intended message and the participants' interpretation highlighted the crucial role of the language plays in shaping our religious and our theology and religious understanding and identity. A cultural theorist like Stuart Hall or Fairclough talks about and points out the meaning is constructed through language and is deeply influenced by social individual conditions. However, and even with that, despite all these things, and when they were asked what kind of language would you suggest, they all, participants, felt even the language that they themselves were using was also inadequate. They were also not happy the way they were using those language. That is why they says, oh, we need time to digest. And as a statement, we need time to digest and we need time to create our own language, encapsulates the participants' broader struggle to find a language that could express their new faith without evoking painful memories of their past or channeling their painful memories of the past. Amir's metaphor of a broken love story further illustrated this need for a new framework, a new way of thinking about God, faith, and identity that could help them heal from the emotional wounds of their deconversion. The focus group discussion revealed that the process of deconversion from Islam and the conversion to Christianity is not just a theological journey, but a deeply emotional, spiritual, and psychological one. The participants struggled to accept new Christian concepts that was shaped by their past religious experience and also they struggle to accept the Americanized version of the worship. Their call for new theological language and acknowledge their pain helps them to reconcile with their past, highlights the need for a more contextually sensitive approach to religious conversion and to Christian theology and ecclesiology, including the worship. As one participant put it this way, our experiences influence the way we meet Jesus. And that indicates a need for a new framework, creating a framework that speaks to their unique challenges. And I need to check the time. Yeah, and however, I will just go through again few points here about what I gained from those two focus groups is, in fact, as I mentioned, the interpretation of Christian faith normally happens using the deconversion as a referencing point for that, and also it also points to the theological shift from Tawhid to Trinity, as we mentioned earlier, not only intellectual challenge, but also the spiritual one, because Tawhid is not only a theological term, but also social and spiritual one. This shift often presents intellectual and emotional challenges. And the other one is the theological shift presents itself as being a liberating one, at the same time also perplexing experience. Reconciliation process is needed. The conversion process in this context become a lens through which they navigate these theological differences and to be able to go through this reconciliation process. And then, of course, I mentioned also about the trauma of the conversion and then also the trauma of conversion. And at the end, they did plea for a new language and a new faith. The new faith needs a new language. From Islam to Christianity is not about theological change, but also about development, new ways to articulate one's faith and one's self. I think I'm going to stop here because I like to leave more room for question and answer.
All right, thank you so much. You had about 13 minutes, but it's time to maybe think with you, reflect with you, and engage you on what you have given us so far. So I think I'm going to just open the floor for everybody. Those of you that are online, please, you can raise your hand on the reaction button that's on your screens if you want to comment, you want to ask a question and so forth. And those of us within the room can just...
Can I just say something before that?
Yeah.
The reason I didn't use my PowerPoint, because I couldn't see the screen, and I didn't know whether I am still there or not. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. Do we want to keep the sharing on, or should we
stop sharing?
Yes, let's stop sharing.
All right, so thank you so much, Sarah, for that. And I'm going to give us an opportunity to engage with Sarah.
Please do.
Well, questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay.
David and then Chala.
Sarah, thank you very much. You're a very serious thinker when it comes to conversion studies. I have no doubts that some of what you're working on will lead to something substantial in terms of publication. I do agree with your point about the conversion narratives being rather negative, because to a large extent, many of those narratives focus on, the idea of breaking away from hegemonic religion, the idea of crisis and problems, instead of focusing on the reality of transformation many of them experience. That's a tragedy, really. And I come from family onwards myself, and I know from the narratives I have heard from within my own family, we had linkages also with Sadhu Singh that Parliament is working on. Through my grandfather, most of the narratives that I have been able to access seem to suggest that converts wanted to focus more on what was happening to them now rather than looking back. And most of them, felt like focusing on crises that led them to looking for new problem-solving contexts or looking for contact with people who could solve their problems was not very helpful for them. We wanted to dwell more on the story of what sort of transformation was happening to them now in the present, and how they could feel like they belong to a community and where they can be discipled in order for them to fully express their commitment to Christ. So that's where I feel the focus lies in the narratives that I have heard within my own family. And I fully agree with you that the idea that somehow converts are helpless and they are brainwashed by people, agencies, or individuals who work among them is really not founded on reality. I believe converts have agency, exactly what you're suggesting as well. And this is in a sense borne out by the story of Sara Afshari Albert is working on. He wasn't really looking for a problem-solving context. In fact, he was running away from institutions and individuals who were offering support to somebody like him. In fact, he tried to solve this problem by himself, in a sense, by looking inwards and seeking what you might call mystical means through which to access support from God. Now, it's all very good. So my question, it's all very good when we're talking about conversion across religions which are part of the same theological structure. So, converting from Islam into Christianity, Judaism into Christianity, and vice versa, it's not too much of a crisis for individuals because the transition really is from one theological structure to another. That's very similar. Across these three religions, we share stories which are common as well. What is more difficult really is for individuals belonging to a theological structure that has nothing to do with Christianity, like Hinduism, with a large number of spiritual traditions within it, ideas of God which are antithetical, really. So you have personalist traditions within Hinduism, atheistic traditions within Hinduism, you have polytheism in Hinduism, you have monotheism in Hinduism. So it's quite a kinds of confusing, conflicting ideologies. So what really goes on in a context like that is worthy of investigation. How do people coming from an opposing theological context to a faith like Christianity, which is monotheistic and personalistic, make sense of what's happening to them? This is really amazing. I don't know what your thoughts on that would be.
One of the things which I noticed, these two focus groups, actually my aim was not the conversion, listening to them, that just happened. And I noticed when you ask their stories, they may avoid that. they may more mainly focusing on what is happening to them right now in relation to the conversion. But because I put them into different situation, now this is two programs. And let's see whether that connects to you and it triggers, and then discussions among them. So then perhaps, for example, with Hinduism, we can use the same method to, for example, provide two different scenarios to see, or three different scenarios to see how they interact or react to those messages are given to them in relation to their deconversion stories or their former faith, and what do they miss and what do they not. And I think if I interview them, I wouldn't get from them what I got in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you so much also, David, for raising this. Thank you so much, Sara, for this very interesting. I think this is a heavy loaded kind of research and many things. If we begin looking at this, and I'm sorry, I'm coming here from like David from very African perspective, and when I'm thinking around this question. So if we think in manifest, I want to start with the concepts themselves, the very idea of conversion and deconversion. And I find this idea somehow kind of not fitting in certain frameworks in terms of understanding. Is it possible that we can think of, for instance, some scholars in African worldview have argued that many Africans who came to Christianity, they came with their religions, which you alluded to as well, that they didn't actually leave them. It's like they were converted as a package into Christianity in that sense. So scholars who have tried to think about conversion, especially in Pentecostal tradition, like Brigham Meyer, argued for the complete break with the past, like you said. Like it's this radical, complete break with the past. That was the argument that most of Pentecostals would bring, that we have abandoned the past. But fundamentally, they have not. Because most of the scholars that you find who have written among Pentecostals, they found that the reason, in fact, they are thriving is because they have actually harvested these worldviews. And that makes it more attractive to the people, and because they come with the entire worldview with them. So talking about the challenge of theological structure in terms of these different religions, how do people think about, is it possible that in fact people don't abandon that theological structure, they come with it? So then Christianity in this sense is contested by the converts themselves. The question that you brought about agency, we can argue that the converts, they are subjects of their own conversion rather than objects, because sometimes conversion has objectified people in the process. And that's why I'm against with the idea of deconversion. I think deconversion is the wrong terminology in this context. Probably we need to think of it in a combination manner, and converting probably, or deconverting in the process. in the process, almost like these things are simultaneous processes that are happening. So in your narratives, especially, you say that these different understandings that are coming, some are arguing this opposite, some are arguing this. It's almost like what they are coming is, if you are from a Pentecostal tradition, you are likely to argue that I've abandoned my ancestors. You get the point. If you are coming from a Catholic tradition, you will say that my ancestors, I cannot abandon them. They are not demons. But in Pentecostal, you say that they are demons. So you have to cast them out. But look at this. What has happened is not necessarily that they have abandoned them. No. In this cosmology, what they've done is to reshuffle them, remove them from being a family, and they reshuffle them into demonic ontology.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, they need them for this structure to be sustained in Africa. If they exorcise them out of this cosmology, it dies completely. The Pentecostal church will die. So they have to reshuffle. So to an extent that the structure, in fact, is going through this contestation, and the very process it's being reshuffling. So what you are talking about is not to say that they are abandoning, but they are reshuffling the structure to reformulate the cosmology, which is not fundamentally a Christian cosmology in that sense, which is not also in that sense Islamic cosmology, but almost like this new evolving cosmology that is contesting itself.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just saying.
Contesting itself into this. So I have many things about thinking around that, but let me end there because she's.
I think you are right. I personally don't like the word conversion or deconversion, but I don't know how to replace it. But I came across this ideology because it is from Latin word, and in the Christianity says okay, the Latin is conversion meaning an artist try to make an art from raw materials, and I like that. And if that raw materials, let's say Christianity is given, converting to Christianity, what is given to us is a raw material. We need to make sense out of that raw material. And but again, it is us as converts, as artists, rather than someone else to come and then bring the raw materials and do their own things. This is, but if it is, I am a convert, I'm an artist, a raw material is given to me, and therefore the conversion, perhaps my raw material, which I can make something here, is not there, so I miss it.
But I think what
see that.
What you are saying also is you should look at then it's a two-way process that is happening in this context. Christianity itself is getting converted in the very process that the converts are getting into it. And I think this is sustainable even in the history of the church. If you look at the whole evolution of Christianity, Christianity doesn't have, I think for me, a very fixed theological structure. Because remember, most of it has been borrowed from Greek philosophy, aspects of it from Judaism, and this continuous borrowing and the abandoning and borrowing and abandoning and borrowing and abandoning. I think it's all the continuity. I think the problem that we had in terms of the past evangelization was to think that there was a fixed structure of Christianity, which everybody should fit their ideas into. But what we are seeing again is this rediscovery of Christianity itself and the ongoing contestation of even of these ideas. And
Thank you.
And because you gave a reflexivity of yourself as circulating from Islam to Christianity. I was just thinking that within Christianity there are also these type of things happening. So you find that the Pentecostals would think the Catholics are not born again. They're not Christian enough. We are Christian. We are better Christians, and all that. That is happening within Christianity. And then worse, when somebody marries, like a Pentecostal marries a Catholic, this person will have to go through certain processes that will have to validate their spiritual stand. So as you were speaking and giving a reflexivity of yourself, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how much of that you had to go through, like where you, was there some suspicions around you, like, is she still really Christian, or is she still Muslim, and all those kind of things. And then after me, Marina, and then you.
Oh yeah, normally I keep them still to doubt. I don't really give them reassurance. It's not my job,
Right.
and it is their problem. That's my answer.
What's up? Marina.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. You have for the presentation. It is a very complex presentation, I would say, because it needs a whole lot of unpacking. So I was thinking about, okay, first of all, I'll just make a comment that was like taking off from what Chama just said. What is Christianity? Because I would say that Christianity that we know now today has migrated from, has migrated through different times and different contexts. So it hasn't, there is no fixed Christianity. Christianity is also moving, and it's agile, I would say, to different contexts, worldview, and situation. I was thinking about the word that you use about, Christians also can keep on reconverting, and the conversion or reconversion continues, and that it doesn't stop, that once you are convert. I would like to theologize that a little bit more, because I would say, instead of using the word, I would not say that as a Christian, I keep on going through the conversion process. I would say that I have been justified by my faith once and for all. It doesn't change, but every day of my life, I am being sanctified every day through the work of the Holy Spirit. So therefore, I am going through a transformation process every day. It's not a done deal just because you're a Christian that you are perfect. So therefore, there is a process that continues. So that is one of the comment that I would just like to make. And also, I would say that every experiences will be different. I'm not denying your experiences and what you have presented, but that expression and the experience you feel would not fit everybody. Because
Yeah.
when we talk about conversion, what are we talking about? Are we talking about conversion of the heart? Are we talking about and get preoccupied with the paraphilia? The outer paraphilia, like the rituals and
Yeah.
traditions that you need to do, exactly to what Mutale has just said. Do you cease to be a Christian when you don't follow the traditions, the rituals and traditions of other Christian traditions, like the Baptists, they do, full immersion, the Presbyterian do a sprinkling. So I'm wondering whether it's not even wondering. It's just like, as I have said, that you have brought out a whole lot of things to unpack, and it's not an easy task. And I would also just like to mention that, like coming from India and my father being a convert himself, I would say that I don't think he go. So there is a difference as Christians being born in a Christian family, knowing what it means to be Christian and being taught about Bible stories and everything from your childhood. You imbibe that culture and you know about it. But if you are converted, I'm taking the example of my father, when you are converted as an adult, it's a continuous process. There is so much to catch up, like from to catch up knowledge, experiences, ritual and rites. What is meaning? I mean, like, what does this mean? Is it meaningful to my life, and so on? And just an example that I would like to bring it. He didn't throw away everything from the past. It wasn't all evil, because he comes from a Hindu background where you burn all this agarbatti at night, the incense at night. And we do that. We practice that when we were children. We burn the incense, go around the house, in all corners of the house, pray, put the incense in its place, and then only we would put the light on. So does that make me less Christian? Am I adapting something that is evil, something that is practiced by non-Christians? So these are the questions that comes to my mind. So I would say that it would be, there are different contexts, different experiences. And so I just wanted to say that
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with you all this, because also I mentioned the conversion process is extremely personal and very much linked to not only really theology, but also spiritually, socially, and culturally. And also I agree with you that, that is why they even says, and even I agree, because we do not have Christianity, we have Christianities. And therefore, when it comes to, let's say, developing a theology for a convert church, it needs to think Muslim, let's say Muslim or Hindu, or it does need to take into account the experience of their journey, both before they become Christian and then after that. And then another thing is again related to myself. And no, one of I like some of the church fathers. I do, because some of them are their writing is very rich. One of them is Bishop Macarius of Egypt. And in one of his homily, Bishop Macarius of Egypt says, we have to renew our conversion every single day. And that is what you were talking about. And I mean, yes, still, I need to unpack lots of things. I know.
I know, first of all, this is fascinating for me. I'm grateful that I came. So there's lots to think about. I think a kind of a conversation with you, David and Sharma. I think to suggest that it's easier or harder may not be fair. I think that the individual experiences determine what is easier or harder. I think the point she makes about the trauma, whichever, whether it's Hindu to Christian or whatever, there's a trauma. And I don't know that, I'm just responding to your idea that if you're coming from a theological structure that looks alike and so on, just a thought that I think that the stories that you reference challenge us to deal with whatever trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
A young single woman, it's a joke, it's a serious one, sent a note to those of us who are older, who are always asking, your peers are all getting married. What are you doing about it? So the rejoinder was, but your peers are all dying, and I have not asked you why you haven't died. In other words, we could value certain experiences, and I think it's a challenge we have. We always create a hierarchy of values. As I think about the African situation, I think that deconversion, conversion, is it possible that part of it is we are stuck in a Western epistemological bind and language that is stuck in binaries, conversion, deconversion?
Yeah.
Would there be a better way to engage?
That's what
Thinking about, yes, let's get the conversation continue. Is it better to think about a spectrum?
Of conversions.
A spectrum, now our forefathers, theologians, BT and so on and so forth, really have been reflecting on that. And I would argue that African theology is essentially arising out of this whole discourse. And I think we stand at a horrible moment in which certain Christianities have been normativized. They are standard. And I think one of the most dangerous is evangelical Christianity. It's extremely dangerous because it's the right theology. It's the right way to believe, and so on and so forth.
That's the only way to believe.
And then of course, as soon as you do that, you then send people to hell and others to heaven. There's a destiny. There's a way in which these theologies are complicated. And I think it's made even harder. It's a power game when it comes with money. With American dollars, with British pounds, with the euros. So those of us who must try and be nice to you guys to pay us in dollars and pounds is a problem. I think the Koreans are very strong now because the Korean currency is strong. That's why Lausanne had to happen where? In Korea. It's very difficult to put Lausanne in a backwater, So that's, I think my last comment would be this. I love the invitation you've given to us to tell our stories. So my father is a first generation follower of Jesus. And I'm intentionally saying follower of Jesus, not Christian. And there's a lot of work. He's taught me a lot. So I don't have the same trauma, but now I have trauma to deal with. Because right now, I'm in a journey of abandoning Christianity to follow Jesus. So he calls me a bishop and he thinks I love justification, sanctification. I actually don't. There is language that I think we need to go back and say, did Paul say this? Was this what Paul meant? Suppose we read it not in justification or sanctification. And I think that the trauma, each one of us, back to the point you make, is we are constantly asking, so could we, rather than simply talk about Christianity, is there a problem with the religion of Christianity in the way it's become presented as the best option? Christianity as the best option. Is it possible that actually what Jesus does is level the ground? All religions are the same. Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, all of them are essentially the same. Not bad, not good, they're just human. Excellent. But Jesus seems to show us a different. So maybe it becomes crucial for us to distinguish and accept Christianity as all the others creates ways of power. I really want to come to this in terms of power patterns, power paradigms, because Christianity wants to be a conqueror religion, like some of the other big ones. Is it possible that the story of Jesus is actually continually being lost in Christianity in all this. And so we are unwilling to reimagine the story of Jesus from the perspective of a Muslim. Reimagine the story of Jesus from the perspective of my grandmother. My mother couldn't read or write. Could it be that this is really the invitation of these encounters? Could that be?
Yeah, that's wrong.
So is that conversion or what it is?
One of the things I'm learning to do is to engage in discourse, not translating words from English to my mother tongue, but rather from my mother tongue to English. And I find that every time I'm trying to work out what does this word mean in my mother tongue, I actually have a problem. Because I'm also privileged in English. I think I have a problem, and this is a real one. I realize that I have been socialized intellectually, academically, to normatize Western ways of thinking, including the Western languages, English to be specific. And so in answer to you, I don't use the word conversion in my mother tongue. It means completely different from what it means in English. Guhinduka. So the word guhinduka is valuable because it hasn't, and again, my mother tongue doesn't have deconversion. You can't add D. You know, you can't add D. You can't do construction and deconstruction. And I'm really thinking that those of us who come from these other languages, I think part of the challenge we have is the hegemony of Western languages. I cry, Jesus, save me from English. But it's such a difficult cry because that's the only way I can have conversation with you.
That is true. For example, in Farsi or in Arabic, we also don't have the word conversion or deconversion. The problem especially in Shia Islam. For example, the translation would be change of religion. But again, in Islam, you can change religion because religion and faith, they are two different things. You can have a religion, not faith, or you can have a faith without religion. For example, in Islam, they have these three pillars, have Iman, Ihsan, and Islam. And Iman meaning faith, Islam meaning mainly embodiment of religion, rituals or that kind of things. Ihsan meaning that goes a little bit about charity and then more good deeds of these things. But again, even all the scholars of Islam says, if you wanted to choose between these three, which one is most important, they would say Islam. That means even if you don't have faith, don't worry. But the practice of the religion, the ritualistic of the religion, just do it if you don't have faith. So change of religion will be a problematic. Am I going to have a faith or am I going to have a religion? And that is why sometimes some people who become Christian, they think they are going to have Islam as a religion and Christianity as a faith. And so then they practice both because Islam distinguishes, especially, for instance, okay.
So is it possible to have your religion as Islam and your faith as in the personal?
There are, I have
and I think that that's a conversation to be had.
Yes, I interviewed few of those converts, and even some of them they didn't know they can't have it.
I just call them those people.
Those people they call themselves, they become Christian. They would say they become a Christian, or they would say they follow Christ, or because each of those references it has a different connotation. If they say I follow Christ, I decided to follow Christ, or I gave my heart to Christ, or I become Christian. They are different. They are all different. They are not the same. And we normally translate the same thing, but it's all this different. And that is why when you listen to the converts, sadly, because English being second language, you have no choice to choose what is in your disposal. And then what we were talking about remind me of the meaning of conversion before Christianity, meaning mainly the artist has some raw materials, wanted to create its own art. The art could be painting or sculpture or whatever. And that is actually, I like that. But again, in that settings, I want the convert be the artist rather than the church. And I become only an object for them to remold or mold me or something. That is why when I was studying theology in Trinity College, Bristol, someone came to me and says, do you believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God? And I says, no. Because it's,
Awesome.
I mean, I did believe, of course I did, and I do, but I didn't like the question. Says, okay, then why am I here? And then because it was wanted to stay in the ignorance, I says, no, I don't. And they prayed for me.
But what you are raising is also important in terms of understanding. Like for instance, in many African languages, there is no concept of religion, doesn't exist. So it's an English concept. But also just remember that the very idea of religion is an intellectual category. It's something that was formulated within the academic context to try and make sense of it. That's just shifted in terms of the way it now functions. But it was also in the past a context of discipline. In Africa, in fact, the missionaries, when they went there, they argued that there was no religion, there was only secularism in the context. So then the challenge was to formulate the religion and then go back and analyze it. Then, so meaning it's imposed back. And says, oh, now you have a religion, now we have to evaluate it. So this kind of shifting,
Yeah, exactly.
which comes with the categories that we use as well. And I think that's why we have to pay serious attention to these concepts when we are using them, how it function within the context where we are.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Shiraz has a question.
From my context, where conversion from Islam to Christianity is almost impossible. But for Christians to Islam, we call it forced conversion, when we are forcefully converted from Christianity to Islam. I need to clear some things in perspective of my own context. Like in Pakistan, and in India, Pakistan, like Judah movement, they are outcasted people. And when missionary came, and they gave them, evangelized them, that time, they not understand the message of gospel. But they convert because they want to have identity in the society that triggered them to be like a part of society. So that's the things force them to convert in Christianity, and they still like struggle for that background. We call it something that's still Christianity in Pakistan called that is Judah, so that's affiliated with us. So I want to know what things motivate them, convince them to convert from Islam to Christianity. And the other question is, well, their struggle maybe related to their background, from which background or affiliation of Islam, like Sunni or Shia, who are more struggle after their conversion.
Thank you so much for asking this question. Actually, that is why it is difficult to define conversion. And then the simplest meaning of conversion in that sense is Rambo saying conversion means whatever the person wants it to mean. That's it. And it's not really a definition, but that is the best way to say is, okay, do you know what? Whoever wants to say, I converted or I become a Christian or become a Muslim, just accept it as it is, as what they say, because conversion only comes through personal self-proclaiming, rather than someone else says, oh, you have converted. No, I'm not. It doesn't work. And then the other thing is because of very personal and very individual choice is very much related to the person's agenda and motivation. And each person has a different agenda and different motivation. If, for example, let's say ask Iranians, they hate this regime and the political statement, or they didn't like or they don't want to be Arabs, or there are some motivations, but very personal motivation. And In my view, the 21st century conversion does not start with faith. Faith comes later. The 21st century conversion is very much individually driven motivation. Gain is based on cost and benefit calculation. What do I gain, as you were talking about?
That's true.
I'm gaining that, who cares? And the other things is because of the heavy involvement of the media and the information, people love to experiment. So multi-direction conversion, again, it's not faith really. It's not belief in the sense of we are talking about iman, in the sense of iman.
Yeah.
It is just, that is why we can't say it's Christianity, it's that. And I think the first conversion also, there are lots, not maybe a lot, is written about how, let's say, about in relation to the Middle East. Islam did not force Christians to convert in a direct way, but in an indirect way. There were lots of social pressure, economic pressure that could trigger those forced conversion, individual conversion, again for gain, or for safety, or for security, or for social things. Did I answer your question? Yes. And then in Islam, as David was talking about, because there are lots of Shia Islam has more conversion. It seems it is easier for Shia Muslims to convert to Christianity because there are much more similarity between Shia Islam and Christianity, and especially Shia Islam and the Catholic Christianity. And then Shia Islam and Orthodox Christianity, because of the similarity, because, for example, in Iran, there are few shrines, Mary shrines, Jesus shrines, or these things, people still go there. So it's closer, it's a brother. It's if Islam, this is one brother, and then Christianity is another. I'm angry with that brother, I'm going to this one.
They're sorting more towards Christianity.
I don't know, Sarah, why you need to make hierarchy. This is not faith, this is benefit, this is economic. Why isn't faith an economic category?
And look, the reason, because if it comes to really accepting in relation to the faith, in relation to, let's say, believing in Christ as Son of God, believing in Jesus Christ, believing in salvation, or these things, these things comes. That is one of the things, my problem with evangelical church. Evangelical church, the moment the person baptized, they think that's it. But in reality, the moment the person baptized is the moment the church needs to carry that person.
I guess what I'm really pushing back on your language of this is material benefit, this is believing. Is there a believing in the Lord Jesus that does not have material implications? So that the category, the distinction you're trying to make is that, does that actually help open the conversation? Isn't what is material a faith? Isn't it what
It is a spiritual game.
So that's why I'm wondering why, because earlier you said most conversions, 20, did you say 20 or 21st century?
21st century.
21st century. I don't even know why you didn't say 20th century. And the missionaries and everything. All of it has to do, you talked about motivations.
Yeah.
And I think you talked about the complexity of the motivations.
Complexity of motivation, definitely.
So I wonder whether by you, what you just said, it's material, you're simplifying it and therefore negating what you said earlier.
I think I am simplifying it, and
Not
I'm
necessary.
yes. One of the things, it's not necessary, because one of the things which is also Christianity doesn't want to talk about it, but also it is what Islam does talk about it. One of the Shia scholars, Tabai, talks about faith. Iman is a contract. Iman is a contract between God and the person. And the part of God, the part of the person is yes, saying yes, and part of God is I will protect you, I will take care of you. And therefore, in Christianity, we have this contract. But Christians, they don't like to talk about it, they wanted to talk about grace. But in reality, when there is a force of saying yes, accepting, that is you entering into a contract. But Islam is very obvious. It says, okay, and therefore, if you look at some of the testimonies, Muslim testimonies, especially Shia testimonies, it's very much based on even the spiritual gain. I prayed, he healed me. So God answered my prayer, and in return, I'm going to accept him. There is says, okay, this is a very cultural thing. If you help me there, I need to do something for you. God healed me, I need to something to do for God. But something could be believing in him. This is, I agree, I am simplifying it.
There is
because that-
a very nice research though on that one in South Africa by a Pentecostal scholar there who worked on Pentecostalism and conversion. So women, focused much more on women in Johannesburg. She discovered, she followed them like longitudinal research. She followed them for 5 years, same women. So when she started, they were all serious, doing all kinds of stuff and making all the promises. And then she followed them up after 5 years and she found almost 70% they had given up. And then she was asking them the question, she said that, I went into the covenant with God. So the contract dimension, Christianity, they call it covenant. Went into the covenant with God, but after 5 years of faithfulness and everything, God did nothing. So I decided to give up. It was comforting.
Can we have some, if there is anyone
I don't
on
know.
Zoom?
We've got,
Or now is the time of.
yeah, we've got
You have a question.
1 minute if you have a question, somebody can just, those of you that are online. Going once, going twice, okay, so there's no question coming through. Thank you so much, Sarah, this has been we've had a wonderful lively conversation and we look forward to more conversations. Thank you for joining us and have a blessed
you.
whatever time it is where you are.
Good to see you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah.
Sara, are you working on this with a pushing them?
Yes, I am planning, but I have so much to do. I don't know when I'm going to work on it.
Interesting.
But I need to do it anyway.
All right.
And we have few of those people who presented, but maybe we can have an edit later.
Zach is my name. That is.
I can join the office.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have and David.
That's your man. That's why you were defending him.
I wasn't defending.
And you were defending him.
My friend- my friend and she-
I know.
You said something, you said that word.
It's one of the Bantu languages. Yeah, it's actually a variant of Kinyarwanda, Kirundi. So it's very much similar to Kinyarwanda, Kirundi.
Yeah, so because I know that,
Is this going to be happening?
they have something.
Exactly. So the same word. The Bantu language.
It's finished, we have to start another meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That's fine. Have you
The
finished?
thing about Bantu language is how the same words are used to mean completely different things. Yeah.
Yeah, they mean opposite.
It's possible to have the same word.
So you use.
Mean radically. Yeah.
Oh.
Shall I stop it? That's fine, yeah.
I'll come all over.
That's fine.
Yes. Like, not